All things ending incarceration of women and girls, here again with another episode of the Free Her podcast from Bangkok, Thailand. Like, who would have ever thought? And with me today is one of our esteemed national, international leaders, the brilliant founder of Sisters Inside, absolutely amazing, brilliant movement lawyer, abolitionist, Debbie Kilroy. I can't tell you, Deb, how much of a privilege this is for me and for the Free Her podcast to have an opportunity to be with you, to be in movement space with you, to be thinking, experimenting, leading with you, and to have this opportunity today in Bangkok, Thailand, at the International Network for Formerly Incarcerated Women to have this conversation. So I want to say welcome to the Free Her podcast and thank you for coming in to say a few words for us.
No, thank you. The honour is mine to be here with you, my sister. And yes, in Thailand, Bangkok, who would have thought? Here we are, building an international movement, and everyone want to get out our lane because we are coming.
We're coming. Speaking of that, I mean, your history in this space, personal history, professional history in this space is so vast and so deep. But really, what brought you to the place of becoming the founder of this incredible organization, Sisters Inside in Australia?
Well, fundamentally being incarcerated and experiencing some of the most horrific harms of the prison industrial complex, not only myself, but seeing my sisters harmed and killed at the hands of the state. And, you know, we said at home, enough is enough, we're done. We're so done, we're not negotiating with you anymore, we're not entering into reformist agenda. We are actually working to end the incarcerated women and girls because it's the only answer to the question, how do we end violence against women?
Tell us a little bit about what it's like in Australia, and who are the women in prison in Australia?
Yeah, well, Australia is, well, so-called Australia by the colonists who invaded, the country over 250 years ago, by the English. They shipped the convicts to Australia and they deemed it terra nullius, which basically means barren land. No one lived there. But we know that Aboriginal people have lived in the country for 80,000 years. And so when the English arrived, they put their flag down and staked their claim to that country, that it's theirs. And still today, we're fighting for land back for Aboriginal people. But from colonisation, the invasion, so many Aboriginal people were wiped out and killed. And the genocide policies continue today. So the ones that they couldn't kill, they herded up and put in missions. And then when the missions closed, they were pipelined into the prison system. So we have a massive incarceration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our prisons. So Aboriginal people make up about 3% of our population, and in some of our women's prisons make up 100%. But across the country, it's about 40% if you average it out. So 3%, that's the whole population of Aboriginal people, not just women. But when we're talking about women and girls, it's about 40%. So the racial gendered violence, genocidal policies of violence, and those practices continue today.
So what is the work of Sisters Inside?
So Sisters Inside started basically from my last prison stint. Like I fronted a court in '89 looking at a mandatory life sentence for drug trafficking. As we all know, negotiations are done on the doorstep, and my husband and I, we fronted court. We ended up pleading guilty to lesser charges, and I got 6 years, he got 3 years. And so our children were separated and we, come back to prison. But for both of us, he was institutionalised in an orphanage. His mother was killed when he was 2. So him going into the institution, the prison, didn't mean much. And for me, I grew up in a children's prisons and I'd been in the adult system. So it was like I'm going back to where I know, right? Not that I wanted to go back there, but I go back. And then that last stint was, we were agitating. I was agitating in the prison for things to change because it was so horrendous. And we were even threatened with mutiny by the manager of the prison. And, that carried a life sentence. But there was so much, it was like a tinderbox, the prison was about to explode. It was Christmas time. It's the worst time for women to be in prison. Your mothers, you want your children, you're away from your family. People are hurting. And so the prison officers were causing this conflict between groups. And then what happened in early January in 1990 is my friend sitting right beside me here was stabbed to death. Prison officers knew that the woman who had the barbecue forks, was sharpening them in her cell. They didn't take them off her. They just let this play out. And Debbie ended up dying that day in hospital. We were both taken to hospital and she died there. And from that, it was about, a spotlight hits the prison and all the community's in uproar like, oh my God, there's women in prison. Oh my God, someone's been killed in prison. It made international news, like no one knew, right? And so all these people come into the prison to help us. They never spoke to us, any of us. They go to management, to corrections, to say, this is what we want to offer. What do they need? Like we're the other, obviously. But what do they need? What can we give them? This is what we think they need. No, not one of them asked what we actually needed. And what we needed was to be free and to be home with our babies and our families. So that became a fundamental failure in so many ways. So we took the lead ourselves internally. There was committees set up, run by all the women in prison around different areas of interest. And one of those committees was the Lifers and Long-Termers, which I was a part of. But I also was like the chair of Street Kids, because all of us were kids on the street, right, that got criminalised and ended up in prison. Anyway, so the Lifers and Long-Termers, we had a vision to end incarceration for us all. Now, we didn't have the language of abolition then. We were just fighting against the system to the point where, one day after I got parole, we started coming back into the prison, having meetings. And then one of the women actually who was pregnant was screaming out at lunchtime for help from the medical, and they never come. And she gave birth in the toilets, and the little baby, the fetus, was in the toilet bowl. Now, what the prison officers, they didn't look after her and what happened to her. They cleaned up which was fundamentally a crime scene, which is supposed to, cordon off, and then called an ambulance. But then they picked up her baby that was in the toilet, and snapped it in half and threw it in a garbage bag. I'd lived through Debbie's murder, but I'm so done. I'm so done with the violence. How, these are other human beings doing this to women and children. And that harm is at a level that still sits with me. And this is in the 90s, right? But it was then that it was like we started agitating to end any carceral logics. And then we decided to have international conferences. We wanted to bring other formerly incarcerated women, not only across our country, but around the world, to have these conversations about how are we going to do this work? How are we going to end, the incarcerated women and girls? Because only we know how to do that. Those of us that have been politicised know how to do that. And to bring our sisters with us. So I sent an email, because people are saying, I'm saying, who should we invite? And someone goes, Angela Davis. And I go, okay, I'll invite Angela. Anyway, and they're like, she's fucking not going to come here. I said, she been in prison? Yeah, I've been in prison. Let's ask her. So I emailed her, and and Angela talks about, she gets hundreds of emails. This is back in 2000. And then she's like, oh, I got an email. She opened this email. And she read our values and went, I'm going to Brisbane. So, and she did. And we met, we fell in love basically, and we've been sisters ever since. But what Angela gave us was the language. Like her brilliance, she connected the dots, the stars for us about what was happening not only in our country, but other countries and to women all around the world, and gave us the language to connect it. And that's then abolition is the only way forward. Even though we were practicing, but we actually never had the language for it. So yeah. And so and we've been going on ever since. And you know, we still work in the prisons, adult women's prisons and the girls' prisons every day. We have staff in there every day in those prisons, because you still got to be with your sisters inside, but also doing this really important international work outside in the free world to end the incarceration of women and girls.
What does it mean in wrapping? What does it mean, Deb, to know how much influence that you have had on all of us, but also to be on the ground level of creating such incredible work, such as Sisters Inside, and also to be one of the pioneers of formerly incarcerated women to bring us all together to begin the international work as being done collectively?
You know, when you say that to me, Andrea, I'm like, I'm just me doing what I need to do in this life. For me and for my sisters, obviously my daughter who's been incarcerated. So it's about relationships, and love and relationships. And that's what I build, I hope I build, and I hope I give to other women who are in prison and formerly incarcerated. But fundamentally, it's about going back into the prisons all the time, because that's where women are, you know, and that's who I need to be held accountable to, is them. No one out here. If women inside at home say to me, you need to stop speaking out, I will take that on board and not. But they don't. They come. So I don't care who else comes and who else tries to divide and conquer us and splits us apart. It's about how we reimagine our own communities of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women to support each other. So Storm, I'll go back to Storm, who murdered my friend Debbie. I had to, for Sisters Inside to be what Sisters Inside is, I knew I had to resolve the issues with her killing my mate. So I invited her to the chapel where we had meetings. This is back in the 90s. Because I knew I had to do the work myself.
In the prison still.
In the prisons. I had to do the healing with her. Because Sisters Inside is about, and this international network is about, all women. And it couldn't be for me, all women except Storm, because she killed my mate.
Right.
Because it meant I had to do the work. Because we're asking women to do the work every day, to do the healing and to move on and to join us and to be politicised. So to do that, I also have to do the work. I have to be true to me and true to women who are still in prison today languishing. And that's why we need to free her. And that's the work that we do together, which I love.
Thank you.
Thank you.